last few years, we started to see a decline in sourcing, not just the economical decline, but the decline in interest in sourcing. You talk to recruiters, they're less and less engaged with sourcing. They don't really enjoy searching anymore. We just have to be honest, and it's our job as sourcing consultants to go to your event and to say, people, we believe it's ending soon. Now, what is ending soon, right? It's not recruiting is ending soon. It's just the way how we define sourcing, like that heroic era, right? Corporate sourcing, think about that. Most companies have really strict IT policies, so they block every extension. They block, almost every website, So yeah, so sourcing has become a little bit, it has become mainstream, but it has also become a little bit boring, maybe, like a bit corporate. The thing that you dedicate your life and your energy and your passion and creativity can be done like this. You just feel like, wait a second, like, is it important enough? There's a new version of recruitment, there's a new version of sourcing. So something, it's not the end, it's the end of that definition of sourcing, and there will be a new definition of sourcing.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Leaders in Talent podcast. And I'm very happy to welcome Balazs on the podcast. Balazs is the founder of Source Code Agency, which is a sourcing consultancy company. Balazs is a world-renowned keynote speaker, and I've seen him speak several times, and I can say from personal experience that whenever Balazs speaks, I listen, and so does the whole sourcing community. And Balazs, to your credit, you've been an advisor to Matcher almost from day one, so it was about time for you and I to have this conversation. And Balazs, actually, what triggered the conversation is you are, as every year, our opening keynote speaker at our sourcing webinar series, The Power of Sourcing. And you had a very contrarian topic, actually. You talked about the end of sourcing. And I had multiple of my sourcers come back to me after they listened and watched your webinar, and they asked me, he's like, Adriaan, what do you think? Is sourcing, is it really coming to an end? And what does that mean for me as a sourcer within Matcher? There were so many, nuggets of wisdom that I said, Balazs, hey, come on the podcast. Let's talk about this for a little bit more, right? So, for the people that haven't seen or watched the recording, tell us a little bit more why you spoke about the end of sourcing.
Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me for this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm always really glad to talk to you, Adriaan. I'm certainly really excited to talk about all things sourcing. So, if you think about the last 20 years, 15, 20 years of sourcing, sourcing has gone through a huge development, right? And now it's going through a transition, I believe. So what it means that, when I joined the recruitment, that was 2004, 5-ish, that time sourcing wasn't really that was prior to LinkedIn, right? That was not prior to the internet for sure, but there was really the infancy of the internet and all of these, digitalization. And and since then, LinkedIn was funded 2004, Facebook was funded 2005, so it was that time, right? And SourceCon, the first sourcing conference so they had the first event in 2007. Okay, so just to understand the context, right?
Yeah.
When we say sourcing, when we all say about a sourcer, that's a person who is really linked to to digital searches or web searches or all sorts of things. And sourcing has a heroic 15 years when most of us got really engaged with searches, with hacking and cracking. Well, not hacking in that way, but cracking.
Yeah.
Is Oscar Maher saying, we broke things.
Yeah.
And that's true, that was the area of X-ray, right? So we invented X-ray. It's and that's something really big. Now, in the last few years, we started to see a decline in sourcing, not just the economical decline, but the decline in interest in sourcing. You talk to recruiters, they're less and less engaged with sourcing. They don't really enjoy searching anymore. You realize that they really only use LinkedIn and they don't want to to go beyond LinkedIn, like they see sourcing as talking, they feel uncomfortable to do all of these things. So, so there were multiple signs. By the end of 24, there were two big signs. One is that Irina Shamaeva decided to step back. And although I didn't talk about Irina about this step, I still believe that this also talks about, she's not stepping back because she wants to deal with her garden and that's it. It's not that. She decided to spend her time on AI and, and Midjourney. And, she's just about to learn a new skill and she wants to join that community, right?
Yeah.
So she's not retiring and doing nothing, but basically she's changing a profession.
Yeah.
And almost at the same time, we understood that SourceCon basically decided to shut down, or well, officially, they merge into a much more, like wider scope of recruiting conference. But but these were signs, and then we started to think about, and we believe that sorting is going through a transition. It is actually happening. It's been going on for a while, and there are multiple factors that trigger this transition. And and we just thought with my colleague Vince Shimchak at the end of last year that we just have to be frank and we just have to be honest, and it's our job as sourcing consultants to to go to your event and to say, people, we believe it's ending soon. Now, what is ending soon, right? It's not recruiting is ending soon. It's just the way how we define sourcing, like that heroic era, right? When we, the geeky, so that type of thing. I believe that's about to be gone. That's ending.
So, and
are you facing market volatility, need to hire quickly, or have a team that sits idle? Meet Matcher, your flexible recruitment and sourcing partner. Scale your recruitment capacity up or down without compromising on quality. Trusted by Booking.com, Miro, Heineken, Grammarly, and Deal, Matcher is the RPO disruptor making waves in Europe and the US. For scale-ups and corporates, Matcher covers engineering, go-to-market, and G&A roles. Visit Matcher.io to see how we can support you. That's MATCHR.io.
And what are the underlying factors that make you believe that kind of era is over?
Like there are really interestingly that there are multiple trends or factors, right? There are direct factors and non-direct factors. Okay, let me give you some some facts. So there's a financial downturn, right? So there's a financial crisis going on for more than 2 years now, and when economies are low, usually there are more job seekers, right? Because companies usually make more people redundant, right? So the active job seeker population, unfortunately, is increasing. So that's one. If there's a lot of job seekers, then there's less need to proactively go after talent and to proactively source them. So but certainly it's really dependent on markets and economies and countries. But there is this trend. There's another trend which I think is really interesting that the whole job seeking market has been reconsolidated. When someone today wants to look for a job, they know where they have to go. They know that every company is trying to post everything on LinkedIn. So, LinkedIn is that go-to place, right? Now, again, there are exceptions. There are certain countries where LinkedIn is still not, as developed as, for instance, in the Netherlands. But, for most of the developed countries, LinkedIn is the place. So why is it important? Because when people know where to go to find a job, then you don't have to find them. Right? If they know, it's like this. If the consumer knows where they can buy the product, you don't have to spend that much on marketing, right? Because or you have to spend differently your budget. There is also this, the whole way how we use social media, that's changed. And I believe that has an indirect impact on sourcing. So, the way we defined sourcing was really community driven. That's how you and I we met, right? We met on the sourcing summit, God knows when, right? Probably 15 years ago, you know, I don't know, like a long time ago, right? But that's how we met. You know, it was really like connection driven. You know, recruiters nowadays, they don't really know that LinkedIn groups were the foundation of all of it. You know, the group of Irina Shamoyeva, you know, that's how we started to talk to each other, right? There was LinkedIn groups that time. So it was really connection driven. I remember the time when I first talked to Glenn Caffey online, and I was, oh my God, you know, I was so honored, and I still honored when I talk to Glenn. So, you know, so that was the way how we used social media at that time. You know, we built connections, right? You remember the time when I think, you know, we've never been really honest about that, but I believe there was a sort of a competition in terms of how many friends we had on Facebook. I clearly remember that, you know, when you felt like, oh my God, Bill Borman, he's got like 6,000 friends on Facebook.
I remember that.
You remember?
Yeah.
Like the number of followers on Twitter, that was a thing.
Yeah.
That was like, how many people follow you on Twitter? Because that talks about your prestige and your importance, you know, in this whole story. Now, okay, fast forward, I don't know, 15 years, we don't anymore care about connecting with people. We just consume content.
Yeah.
We don't mind, you know, I mean, there are people who are friends of mine, and I'm not even connected with them anywhere, technically, you know. It's all about like finding the right content. It's all about entertainment. And that basically, this whole thing has just changed the scope of recruitment as well. We always say recruitment now is always about engagement, but that's really true. And it's also true that sourcing as such is not anymore an exciting topic. Don't get me wrong. This is my baby, right? I mean, I spent it's interesting to say, you know, I'm 45, but I spent the last 21 years in sourcing. Like I spent like a time of a generation in sourcing. I know it sounds crazy, but it's not any more interesting. When you talk to a recruiter, you don't really excite them, you know, with sourcing. You say like, oh, did you think about this search? And they're like, that's fascinating. You know, when you think about, you know, okay, what is the right way to engage with a candidate? You know, what is your subject line? What is your reply rate? You know, what is your call to action? Okay, do you use this? Do you automate? That's of interest to recruiters nowadays. So, you know, that's also changed. So there's a few more factors, but let me just take one more. I think at the beginning, you know, sourcing was really the field of, I always say the field of the geek. You know, I was a perfect fit to sourcing that time because, you know, because I was a guy who was creative, you know, who was smart, but I wasn't really good in, you know, in the corporate world, you know, in that I wasn't polished enough. You know, like I wasn't not politically correct. I think I just wasn't polished enough. You know, so diplomacy is not my strength. But sourcing was a perfect fit for me because I was able to use, you know, my brain, you know, my logic, and my creativity. Now, sourcing has become a corporate function. You know, like sourcing has moved into the big company, the Googles, the Metas, the Apples, you know, everyone. And now you see that, you know, companies, all sorts of companies have sourcing functions nowadays. Now, when something has become a corporate function, then there's a price for that. You know, you cannot anymore be that white child. You know, if it's a corporate function, guess what? You know, you have to comply. You know, you have to play the corporate game. You know, you will have limitations. You know, GDPR is not just a buzzword, but this is your reality. You know, and so on and so on. You know, corporate sourcing. Think about that. Most companies have really strict IT policies, so they block every extension. They block, you know, almost every website. You know, so so sourcing has become a little bit. It has become mainstream. But it has also become a little bit boring, maybe, you know, like a bit corporate. And I don't know, you know, and so with all of these factors, you know, you just see that, you know, sourcing is important, but maybe not as exciting anymore as it was before.
So what does that mean for you?
Well, really interesting, you know, because I really dedicated a lifetime to this, you know. So there are personal reasons. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but there is also professional, things
No, but
like
like
professional.
go wherever you want to go, right? But like and
Okay, I
please
tell you
share
because
personally. Yeah, please share
oh,
personally
I
as
tell
well.
you this. Some months ago, I had to reconsider of my whole life
Yeah,
because I put my entire life on this sourcing,
yeah,
and then from one day to the other, I understood that probably this profession is gone. And sometimes I just feel like I always tell I always tell my children and my friends that I feel like that, and I don't want to hurt anyone, but I feel like that I'm the CEO of Kodak. It's like, you put your
yeah,
entire life on
yeah,
one company, on
yeah,
this whole story, and then from one day to the other, it's gone.
yeah.
No one cares about that anymore. You feel like that old guy, who's going to the club and he's trying to dance, but we don't dance anymore
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah,
it just
yeah,
feels awkward. And
yeah,
that was
yeah,
that moment when I was like, wait a second, like, hey, was it the right idea to put my entire life on this profession? Right? Was it the smart movement? Was it worth it, Adrian? I always spend a lot of extra time, on sourcing. I was really fanatic about this
yeah,
whole story.
yeah,
I really dedicated my life. But when you realize in your own life that the thing that you dedicate your life and your energy and your passion and creativity can be done like this, you just feel like, wait a second, like, is it important enough? That was the private, that was a personal story. And I was like, oh wow, that's an interesting question, right? Like, do I really want to still, dedicate the majority of my life to something which can change like this? And, probably in 10 years, no one will ever remember. Like, anyway, so that's that, right?
yeah.
Professionally, well, I think what really triggered me, um, and I think this trigger is the reply to my previous question, is that there's a change. So something will happen. It doesn't stop like this. Like there's a new version of recruitment. There's a new version of sourcing. So something, it's not the end. It's the end of that definition of sourcing, and there will be a new definition of sourcing. There will be a new definition of maybe of recruiting, right? So, and that's fascinating. So, will I dedicate the second half of my life to this? Probably I will. As stupid as I am. But it's just really exciting to think about that. Maybe in my life, I will be able to witness two really different way of recruiting. And I think that's fascinating enough.
That is fascinating. That is fascinating. That is fascinating. So what message would you have to people working as sourcers?
It's really interesting, like it's always been the message, isn't it, right? That you have to be open, you have to learn, you have to, it sounds really, it sounds like a cliche from an old man,
That's
but
why
wait,
it's a cliche, right? That's why it's a cliche. It's a cliche
but
because
wait,
it's a
wait,
cliche. Yeah.
but wait a second. So I still know a lot of sources and recruiters, who still, for instance, who don't use ChatGPT at all, right? They still don't know how to use ChatGPT. Now, I can tell you, I have ChatGPT open when I'm working, open in a screen, and I constantly use ChatGPT,
Yeah.
like constantly use ChatGPT. Like I was thinking to write something about, how many ways. I was like, millions of ways I'm using ChatGPT, for professional purposes, for private purposes. I just cannot imagine my life without that. And still, there are hundreds, thousands of recruiters who don't use it, who don't leverage it. And I just feel like, why? I mean, like it's so obvious that life is moving that direction. So you really have to get there. Now, so that's one of the things, right? Hey, listen, I spent 20 years of my life in this story. And in the age of 45, I want to be still energized enough to change my entire perception about the profession.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can just shut down my own business. I can shut down my own, career, my own character. But do I really want to do that? Of course not. And the only way to get there is that you have to still look around, see the signs, and try to understand where we live.
Yeah.
And, maybe if I can say one more word, the challenge is this, recruitment is a really reactive profession. We are not inventing the word. That's not us. We are not the great inventors. We are adapters. Recruiters are adapters. We adapt to life. If life is changing, we are changing. And I'm always saying that, like, too bad that internet happened, because otherwise we would be still happily posting in newspapers, right? Like, there is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like, they always think about, oh, that was a good time when we just went to monster.com and posted, but too bad life's changed, too bad we've got LinkedIn, so we have to change. But that's the whole thing, because we are a reactive profession, because we all only change because the people are changing, right? Because our talent market is changing, because the way how people behave, how they think about employment, how they apply to job, because they are changing. That's why we have to change. And many people hate changing. Many people still want to believe that it's enough to post in a job board. Now, okay, it's enough to post now on LinkedIn, but probably not enough. Like, anyway, so we can go there as well. But that's what I see. Like, you have to be awake, right? You have to know where you are, where you live, what's the year, what's the month, like what's happening on the world, and understand where we are, understand the trends, and try to, like, estimate or guess or predict where we are going. Yeah,
A lot of wisdom there. A lot of things. A lot of things. So, but here's what I find interesting, right? So, as you know, we're a global embedded RPO company. We still get requests from clients that they need sourcing support, right? And actually, it's one of the roles that we are still hiring for. We have sources with us that have been with us for years. What do I, one, tell them, and two, isn't this a natural evolution of a profession that's, as any profession, keeps evolving, right, to something new, right? Like now, indeed, like if I look at my sources, right, they spend 98% of their time on LinkedIn, but they work on roles where a client has very little inbound applicants. The recruiter typically doesn't have time, and also not the stamina to sit down and find these candidates, right? Engaging connection requests and emails and emails. That they're super happy with the work that the sourcer does. What do you think? What's your take there?
So, the moment when we will have technologies that will help us search in the ATS, and the moment when we understand that actually we spend a double money. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not talking against your business, but we spend double money employing an agency or employing an RP or whatever, even just employing a recruiter, right? So it's to go out and find someone who potentially is already in the ATS, right? Or someone who has already applied, maybe 2 years ago, and because of GDPR, we had to delete his profile, whatever, right? But like, if we think this way, what if I find a way to go back to this candidate after the data privacy, time frame, and say, hey, Adriaan, do you want to stay with us? Because then in the future we will be able to whatever. If we find a way to do it well in an automated way, and by the way, if I have a search engine within my ATS which is able to find all of these people, rank them, show me the top 20 every time, every second, and then maybe automatically connect with them and engage with them, or like send them an email, send them a text follow-up, send them a whatever. If this is not happening today, this is not yet existing, but we are that close to it, like, because all of these technologies are now available. Okay, what is missing? Many things are missing, but primarily the mindset is yet missing. Second, global established providers yet are missing, but we know it's going to happen. So the way I see it is that I believe that the data, it sounds so old school, the database management. But I truly believe that we will understand that it's all about that who we are connected with, who we have in our database, and how we can engage with them and constantly re-engage with them. And and this type of work can be fully automated, or I think will be fully automated. What I believe is that, if I'm recruiting to a manufacturing company, let's say, I have a huge database and I can constantly work with my existing people. Now, time to time, I have to go out to the market. I have to advertise. I have to do my, social media extraction. So I have to, still do that, right? But I pull in people here because because the moment when I brought them into my system, then I can use my AI and automation to process with them, with all of these people.
Yeah.
So, so on LinkedIn, just think about that with all of these AI features of LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
What will that cause? Honestly, nothing else than an even bigger noise on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That will happen. It sounds fascinating. So now there's an advantage for those who can use the LinkedIn AI thing, who are early adapters of all of these features. But over probably 1-2 years, it will just generate an even bigger noise. So after a while, it won't be any helpful, right? So we will go back to the first question that, what, let's try to build this database. Let's try to build our talent pool. Let's try to, build the pipelines and, and so on and so on. I think that, and there's another thing. Oh, sorry, Adriaan, I just have so many thoughts. But
It's
you can
fascinating.
stop me anytime.
No, fascinating.
that just think about how people look for a job and how do they apply nowadays. Like a job application or applying to a job has become a commodity. When someone is is taking a job, they don't anymore carefully select, let's say 10 opportunities out of the hundreds and then, tailor made their CV. Oh, come on, not. They have a CV. They may even use AI to, to tailor make their CV, right? And then they apply to every position. They don't anymore remember where they've applied. Now, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Honestly, it's not relevant. This is the reality. It's a commodity. If you need a job, you don't care, you need a job, right? It's that mindset. And I think we can't blame people, right? I mean, it's just anyway, it's another long conversation. People find a way to apply, to go into these databases. So that's that. I truly believe that is a big part of the future. Now, what is sourcing will do? Probably there will always be that 5-10% really hard to source or confidential or whatever. Yeah, that will be sourcing. Like that will be that type of sourcing.
Yeah.
When you talk to you're an RPO provider, right? So you not only proactively source, but you use every channel, right? And when you work for a larger company, right? Not a unicorn, not a startup, right? A larger, client. You see, I guess yourself that sourcing brings in what? Depending on the client, what 20%, 17%, 10% of the hires? Like it's usually a minimum number. Like it's quite minimal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our reality.
Hey, what about then the role of a recruiter? How do you look at the role of the recruiter, especially in this day of AI and what you said before?
I think what is fascinating is that what we misunderstand when we say, oh, AI and automation is that we just think about that, like these systems will run on their own. But it's not true. It's, think about ChatGPT. It's all about how you prompt. Some people can prompt, some people cannot prompt.
Yeah.
And I thought for a long time that this is just, it's ridiculous. I mean, everyone should be able to prompt, but it's not true. I mean, not everyone can Google. My boyfriend, he's using Google for sure. I mean, everyone's using Google, but he cannot find information. And I'm like, well, you should have used that keyword. It's like, come on, I'm not looking for that. I know, but you should exclude. He doesn't get it because it's not his profession, right? It's the same thing. if there is a sorcerer sitting in a larger corporation, facing a ATS with a few 100,000 or million candidates, you still have to find them, right? You still have to build somehow the search parameters. You still have to think about how you set up the AI search engine, and that, you have to be extremely smart because you need to understand the way the technology works to be able to find your potential candidates. Now, do you have to go through hundreds of profiles? No, that will be done by the technology, but it will be as good your prompt is. If your prompt is not good, then the search result won't be good. And that's just the way it works. So I find it really fascinating that, think about this. Sourcers will manage, I think, like an extremely large set of databases. And it will be their job to build segments, pools, pipelines of these people via various factors. Like, I want to build a segment in a certain location with a certain skill set. So probably use these keywords or that keyword family, right? I leave it to you because you're AI, right? So you have your suggestions, but I give you the prompt. And by the way, I want, to first just work with those people who clicked on my previous email, in the last 6 months. So, so that's a segment. And with these people, I want you to do this. And, if they click on my email, do this. Like, that's the way, I think how we will source. That's fascinating, because one sourcer will be able to move or manage or like run, like tens of thousands of candidates in a really short time. I think it's super exciting.
I love it. I love it. Hey, and on that note, right? Giving, right, 21 years in the sourcing industry, right? You built your brand, you built your company around it, and you've built your community there. What excites you about the future, Balazs?
I'm Hungarian, who, when I was 41, I decided to leave the country. I moved to Florence, Italy. Then I lived there for 3 years. I thought I would settle down forever in Florence, but I randomly met a guy, a Parisian guy. I fell in love with him, so I decided to follow him just to move to, to France. I'm here, and and sometimes I'm asking the question from myself, like, okay, so when will I really settle down? And honestly, I think I will never settle down. I think I'm not that type of guy.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm dreaming about that. I'm dreaming about a house with a garden, with a dog and a cat, and and then having my grandchildren, and whatever. I have these, I think, fake dreams. Like, it will, it may happen one day. But will I really settle down? Probably never. So what excites me is this change, is that intelligent thing that I just want to see how my children live in 10 years and 20 years, and and how this profession will follow all of these changes. And I hope, Adriaan, that we will have the chance to see that, right?
Yeah.
And not something really brutal would happen in the meantime. But I really want to believe that, that we have the chance to see that. Like, if you just think about 20 years before, how the world looked like and where we are at, wow. Like, what concerns me is that I don't use TikTok, and and the moment where because I registered on TikTok and I created a few videos, and I was even doing some like that, you try to sing Dura with with these things. Okay, that was a few years ago. Okay, not now, but TikTok was the first, and I'm not talking about the platform. I'm talking about the type of content, was the first thing, which was already far from my interest. It was too much for me. I just find myself being super ridiculous on TikTok, and that was the first time when I was like, oh shit, there's something where I cannot anymore connect. Like, I feel like it's not my generation, and that concerns me. That's like, that doesn't sound good, because because we know that the moment when someone stops following the word, that's the moment when we start shutting down the systems.
I feel old now, Balazs. I feel
No, come
old.
on, you
Yeah,
are so young. Come on,
yeah,
just look at
yeah.
yourself. Like,
I
you
don't
run
use
all
TikTok.
over
I
the
don't use
world,
TikTok. Yeah, yeah. I remember when
It just,
my stepdaughter during COVID, she was on TikTok all the time. So me and my wife, Oye, were like, okay, let's check this TikTok out. And we recorded at the time. There were all these dance videos that were very popular. So we
yeah,
did a dance challenge, and we recorded ourselves and
of
then
course.
uploaded that onto TikTok. And when we looked at the video that we recorded, all of a sudden it dawned on us: we are old. We are now our parents, right? Like when you look at your parents, like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
parents, don't
I know.
dance, it's embarrassing, right?
Right.
All of a sudden we looked at ourselves like, wow, this is the next generation. Yeah.
Right. But, but I think, as long as, we keep our, like things open. I mean, we don't have to do these dance challenges anymore, right? But we need to know where we live. That's I guess that I'm just repeating myself, but it's just so important. I remember, my grandma when she said that. I said, okay, mommy, do you want a laptop? Shall we bring you a lap? And she said, why would I need to? That's the moment, when you
Yeah.
cannot level up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Balazs, last but not least, what advice would you give sourcers? I mean, we talked a little bit about it, right? Like, what advice would you give sourcers or recruiters that love to source or love to do things as a final positive ending to our conversation?
I heard the word positive. I get it. Okay,
Yes.
I get it.
Yes. Yeah.
No, really. I tell you this. I'm working with a great client nowadays, and I'm taking a job with them, and I started to recruit again. And I really enjoyed it. I can tell you, really enjoyed it. I interview a lot. I can't tell you it was the last time when I was interviewing people, right?
Yeah.
Or nowadays I'm interviewing recruiters, right, to my own team. And I tell you this, Adriaan, every time when we finish a conversation, 80% of the time, the candidate told me that they just want to thank you for the live and honest conversation. And I was just like, Lord, like why 80% of these people say that?
Yeah.
And what I understood is that probably it's rare nowadays that we just recognize the other person.
Yeah.
We talk to someone, we listen to them, we think what they said, we ask the right questions, we go for a conversation. And I understand, we have to select people and we have to assess people, right? I get it. I mean, I guess I'm a recruiter. But what I want to say is that just stay alive, just as Katrina saying, just be human. But really, like be open, learn whatsoever. But most importantly, don't forget that you just exist. Like you're a wonderful human being. That's the beautiful part. Interviewing people can be so tiring, and really like being present in the moment when you interview someone it requires a lot of effort. But this is the most rewarding thing that we can do in this profession, is just to be present, just to create something meaningful conversation, just to ask a question that makes the other person smile. I was talking to yesterday to a guy, and then I asked something, and he was like, that's a tricky question, right? I said, yeah, you're right, it's a tricky question. And I don't know, I guess that's it. Be present, be like, that's it, be present.
Love it. Balazs, as always,
Thank you.
such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. I love it. I love your honesty. I love how you think about it, but also like the reflection that you've done after so many years of working in sourcing, and to share that message with the world and to witness your own journey. I'm excited to have you on next year, and then we're going to see where are we in terms of the end of sourcing or not, in terms of what is AI, like is recruitment still a job, right? Is it the end of recruitment or not? Balazs, thank you so much.
Thank you, Adriaan. Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.